Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's time to start living the RAAD life with our resident raconteur, our bon vivant, our man about town, our community activist, the one man who seems to have his finger on the pulse can only be the leader of the RAAD life himself, Rad Cantos. Welcome, sir.
Paul, can I just start off by complimenting you on having the ability to have keeping the enthusiasm in your voice as you have introduced me almost daily for the last 2 weeks.
I try and change it up a little bit.
You start to live the life again. No, but thank you. I appreciate it. It's a Friday. I don't think we've done a Friday before.
I don't think so.
This is the first time
curious
Friday.
To see if anybody's tuned in or if they've all checked out.
No, they don't listen, man. They never listen. But we hit them up with content all the time. So anyway, if you are joining us, happy Friday. And just kind of a reminder that usually the show is on Wednesdays, but we've been doing regular candidate spotlights. And I seem to be repeating myself a little bit with people even yesterday at an event. But the reason why we're doing it is because anybody who steps up and is of service and wants to basically stick their head in the lion's mouth, so to speak, of public office, should be applauded for doing it instead of us doing it.
Or seriously examined.
No, seriously, it's part of our democracy and democratic process, but it's sometimes thankless, and so I think we need to acknowledge the fact that they're stepping up and doing that. And then also I think in a lot of ways, especially with local elections, we tend to do these forums and they're too short. You don't really get to know the candidate. You get a couple of questions thrown at you and then you get
and 50 people show up, so the rest of the community can't make it.
Well, 50 people show up, and 25 of them are angry, and the other half are not.
25 are lost. Right?
Yeah. So the point of doing this, really, honestly, is we like to have a chance and give the candidates a chance to actually be known. And we keep telling people, if you have any questions, ask us. We will. Dr. Sherine Smith is on today, and I think that was the last one in our most recent publicized list of people that we're going to attend, but we got another one coming next week, and we're going to be doing this all the way through till October, end of October, and I will be inserting at the end of the month. I'll be doing one that's not a recap necessarily, but just kind of sharing from my perspective of sitting in this chair and interacting with a lot of people that are running.
Are endorsements coming from RAAD?
No. I'm not going to endorse, because we tell people, for the record, I'm a non-party preference registered voter, and I basically am an equal opportunity griller. No, don't worry, Sherine, we're right. But the point is that we need platforms that are kind of somewhat neutral ground, like people can feel comfortable coming and basically sharing, right? Whatever their platform is.
You mean when we talk and not scream?
Well, when we talk. Yeah, talk. What is it? Streaming, not screaming.
That's
right?
our motto.
That's
the
motto
here.
for the
station. Talk Radio, streaming, not screaming.
Right. And when Paul can keep his political leanings to himself over there in the chair, usually. No, he's friendly territory, but he gets to be vocal sometimes.
I'm just saying, I worked with teenagers, so.
Oh yeah,
she can handle it.
So I think she pegged you the minute she walked in.
I'm just an overgrown adolescent.
She had your number. And he's so true about that, by the way. So with that being said, we've been focusing on a whole different slew of seats and people running in campaigns that are happening,
and seats that nobody ever talks about. I always say, as invested as we are at the national level in these days, and we're so fired up, left, right, or center, we pay so little attention to the offices that really impact us. Like today, the Capistrano Unified School District.
Yeah.
If your kid's in that big, huge school district, that affects you directly.
Yeah, and so Sherine, thanks for being here. I really appreciate you
pleasure.
taking the time. I know you guys are busy during campaign season. But I really think you have the ability to, because of your background, and I'm going to give you a chance here to basically share that with the audience. But I think you have the ability to shed a light on this role from multiple perspectives, because you've been on the receiving end of policy. You've kind of had to deliver on parents' expectations in your different roles, right? And I think I haven't had that opportunity to talk to somebody like that. So without further ado, thank you again for being here. Would you take a minute and just share a little bit about your background and the ultimate question, why are you running?
Right. I'm running because public education has been my life's work, and I feel that I have a unique skill set that I can bring to Capistrano Unified
Okay.
and help, bring a skill set that isn't currently on the school board to the fore and help us make informed decisions. My background is starting as a teacher in Capistrano Unified back in the 80s. I went to school at Chico State.
Okay.
That's where I got my degree in history, and I also can teach English, and got my teaching credential. I was recruited out of Chico State and became a teacher down here in Capistrano Unified. After I was a teacher, I went into administration. I've basically held almost every single job, sat in every single seat. So I was an activities director at Dana Hills High School. Also, at the time we had vice principals, so we dealt with attendance discipline issues. I was an assistant principal, so I worked on guidance, master schedule, etc. I became a middle school principal at Aliso Viejo Middle School, high school principal at Capistrano Valley High School. Went into the district office after that. Again, I was recruited into the district office, had many opportunities that were offered, and I'm very grateful for those. Capistrano Unified was growing very rapidly at the time. We opened, for example, I think it was around 1995 or in between 1995 and 2000, 25 schools. Extremely rapid growth. At Capistrano Valley High School, we had 3,300 students when I became principal. That was in 2000. So into the district office, and I was an executive director of secondary schools, an assistant superintendent of secondary schools, associate superintendent of secondary schools. I ultimately was the deputy superintendent of education, which meant I had responsibility for all schools, all 57 schools at the time. Elementary through high school, plus preschools, adult education, special education, technology for the entire district, and safety. So it was quite a large division, worked with many wonderful people, and I was privileged to be part of setting that very high standard that we still have in Capistrano Unified.
Yeah, so you're slightly qualified, I would say.
Well, and after I left Capo,
Oh, there's
which
more.
there's a story behind why
Okay.
I left, because
What?
I
Okay.
would not have left. That was the board takeover in the
Yeah.
09, 010 era.
Yeah.
I was superintendent in Laguna Beach Unified School District, which
Okay.
is where I retired.
Okay. And
Unfortunately, we're out of time. That resume took so
yeah,
long.
Yeah, I think.
Wait, there's more.
Okay. Yeah, we're done. Just go vote for Sherine. But what? So why and how long had you stepped away?
I retired in 2016.
Okay. So why come back now?
Right. I feel like we're at a tipping point.
Okay. Tell me more.
We have the person I'm running against in Area 3 in San Clemente is someone I think who is not a pro-public education person. She is the person who brought the forced outing policy to the school district. She brought that forward last October. It was very controversial. It created a lot of division in the community.
And for people who don't know
explain
what
what
that
that
is,
is.
explain that.
It's part of a national movement actually, and there's a handbook, a playbook where you can find this policy. And some districts like Chino Hills, Temecula Valley, happened in Orange Unified, brought this policy forward in order, and they call it parents' rights policy. And that is if a student, if a teacher finds out a student wants to use a different pronoun or go by a different name, whether that child tells the teacher directly or the teacher just overhears it, then that policy was intended to mandate that the teacher tell an administrator and the administrator tell the parent within 3 days. And it's a way, it's basically a way of forcing the outing of students if they haven't already shared it with their family. Mostly in my experience as an administrator, as a principal, as a superintendent, families come to the school district, they come to the schools and ask for support. It's not a surprise. It's something that they navigate as a family. If there is that rare individual where the student hasn't felt comfortable sharing, their status with their family, then we arrange with a counselor usually, and then maybe a principal, depending, but definitely the counselor.
But you've been in a situation where you've been on in that principal seat, or you've been on
Correct.
the faculty side of the seat versus the administrative part. When you were telling me this, it just would sound to me that in most cases the family would already know,
Mostly.
right?
Mostly, yeah.
So it's to your point, it's a rare situation. Does that really require a policy?
No, I think it's a manufacturer crisis, honestly. We have already processes in place to help open up lines of communication between parents and students if it's needed.
Okay.
Again, very rare. And in my experience, in those very rare circumstances, the parents are they might be surprised, usually not surprised, but they're very accepting. On extremely rare occasions, a parent might be very upset and the student could be not safe, could be put in danger because some parents, again, very, very few, do not treat their children with the dignity and respect that they deserve, that every human being deserves.
Okay, since we're talking about that, a little bit of like parents not knowing, right? I mean, you've again been in that seat where you've encountered situations. I mean, forget about this particular aspect of the pronoun usage, right? Or, I mean, heck, I mean, kids have nicknames. Do the parents know about the nicknames? I mean, it seems kind of funny. Like if somebody's calling me Goose, which I used to be called in high school, did my parents know that? No, but I mean, that's not my name. So is that grounds for somebody to out me on the fact that this is what I'm called? I am being referred to as some form of bird fowl. Like so okay. So are there things that actually make it like where the school finds itself in that situation where the parent is not aware of something, and then is there a policy and procedure in place already to where basically the parent gets notified? Let's not on this particular topic, but like maybe something else, something more serious,
Yeah,
depression, mental.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or let's say you found out they were a gang member or something, or a member of some
Well,
controversial
but I'm
group
just
or something.
I'm just my question is, I would think that there would be some sort of policy there where the parent is not left in the dark if the school feels like there's something that they need to be notified by, right? Isn't that in place?
That's correct, unless it puts the student in jeopardy.
Okay.
I'm going to use an example
Yeah.
from when I was an assistant principal.
Yeah.
Sometimes a young lady would get pregnant and would come in and be very upset, didn't want to tell her mom or dad. And so the conversation was then, well, if I sit with you, if the counselor sits with you and your mom or dad, and we tell them together, will that be okay? Will that, well, they're going to be so upset. Well, okay. They might be upset, but are you going to be safe, or are you going to be in danger? No, they'll just be upset. Okay, well then let's arrange to set up that time to talk it through. If we do that together, is that okay? Yes. Again, on rare occasion, no, it was not okay because the student would be placed in a dangerous situation.
Right, for whatever reason, we don't need to get into them. Okay, so I mean, I'm complete novice. I don't have kids, right? So I mean, I live vicariously through my sister's children, who basically are both in college now. So, and as any aunt and uncle knows, we get the benefit of enjoying them and then handing them back to their parents, right? So are there other, like, we're talking school district. So when it comes to stuff like that, is there set policy, let's say maybe on like a county level or a state level, that also is another layer that's in place where the school districts have to kind of operate under certain guidelines?
Yes.
I don't know. Is that the case?
So there is education code, for example, that basically mandates that school districts advise parents of their rights and responsibilities.
Yeah.
And it's quite a lengthy list. It's extensive. And school districts post that on their websites.
Yeah.
Depending on how they format it, 20 to 25 pages of rights and responsibilities that parents have.
So I'm going to just play devil's advocate here. So what happens in a situation like we're talking about, bringing it back to that sort of like, binary or recognition, or how you want to be identified, right? Doesn't that, the school district, if they're trying to get a policy through, or if there's a policy at the school district, doesn't it have to align also with the state, or there's grounds for conflict?
That is correct. And the policy that my opponent brought forward would be in conflict with the current state law, which went into effect, I think it was January.
Yeah.
So in fact, and she has stated that she will bring that policy forward again if she's elected and there's a majority with her and the slate that she's running with.
Yeah.
Can you get you a little closer to the mic?
Yes.
A little closer to the mic? There
That
you go.
she
You're
intends to
You're
bring.
leaning back out of it here, right?
She intends to bring that policy forward again, and
When was it originally brought up?
last October.
Okay, and what happened?
There was a big community outcry.
Okay.
There was a board meeting specifically
Yeah.
where that topic was addressed. 500 people showed up.
Yeah.
200 people were in the boardroom. That's maximum capacity. 300 people outside.
Yeah, and I've been to a few of those Capistrano Unified. I mean, we think San Clemente is over engaged. I mean, I think South County, when it comes to the school district, is very engaged as well.
We care.
Yeah.
We value our
Yeah,
schools.
yeah.
So fortunately,
It's not unusual, is what I'm trying to say.
no.
Yeah.
Right. And this
Yeah.
was a hot topic,
Yeah.
very hot topic.
Yeah.
This was, hotter than normal.
All right.
So the board
Sorry, I
voted,
missed it. Not really. Yeah, but yeah.
the board voted 5-2 to not pass that policy. So
Okay.
my opponent and another woman who represents Mission Viejo voted in favor of the policy. So
Okay.
it did not pass.
Okay.
In the meantime, but it had passed in districts like Chino Hills, Temecula Valley, Orange.
And I'm sorry, I'm interrupting, but was there like the reason that the policy was brought out at the school district level, was it because there was clarity that the state may be moving towards a policy and it was trying to get it in before? I'm just trying to kind of get a timeline.
No, it's a political
It just
agenda.
it was just
It's
it was
a
just it
political
was just
agenda.
okay. And it didn't pass. So since then, you now have a state position on this, right, and a
Correct.
policy. Okay, so now it's going to be brought up again, and let's just say, for argument's sake, let's say it passes. Does that mean now put the school district in conflict with the state?
Correct.
And then what's the procedure? What happens then?
Well-
Is there potentially punitive action or some sort of reaction from the state to the school district?
Yes, and the dialogue that we have heard is that the slate, if that slate were elected, would then absolutely fight against Sacramento. So that means
So now there's
lawsuits.
there's legal expenditures now.
Lots, hundreds of thousands of dollars,
Right.
which comes straight out of the classroom because we
Right.
don't have a special fund where
Right.
we pay legal fees.
Right. Well, and this is where I was going, because this is the thing that just infuriates the heck out of me as a non-party preference voter, but that fiscal irresponsibility of basically just doing stuff like that to weaponize or politicize the situation, and then that it ends up costing money. Because if I'm assuming that if that school district if Capistrano Unified, for example, finds itself in a legal battle with the state, which is very likely given the nature and the composition of the state.
Kind of their pledge, actually.
Right, yeah. It's now we're going to basically have to incur a cost that will then eventually be translated, because we're still going to have to meet requirements for the school district. So me, as not even necessarily a parent, but as a property owner, I'm now going to get potentially hit with certain measures or certain ways to mitigate that cost outlay.
Well, it's in my opinion, abuse of taxpayer funds, because those funds are meant to help us teach kids.
Yeah.
They're not meant to be used for frivolous lawsuits.
No, and I totally get that, but I'm trying to paint a picture for people that may be like me. I mean, and let's face it, we have an aging county.
Yes.
So there may be people that don't have kids in the home,
Oh,
or
tons.
or
Yeah.
they're like, and maybe not even have grandkids, like
Correct.
or they're So I mean, we've mothballed some schools for a duration of time, and that I know about, right? So just because that's not the case, it doesn't mean that actions like this are not going to attach themselves to potentially property taxes or some impact on the community, where it's now basically the ripple effect of a decision of this nature.
Mostly the impact would be budget cuts in the school district. It wouldn't be an imposition of a property tax, because the district doesn't really have the ability to do that. But it would cause cuts in the classroom. And so, for example, speaking as a
Yeah.
former high school
Yeah, yeah.
principal who had to run a master schedule,
Yeah.
if I had to cut a section, which
Yeah.
is at the time was around $20,000 in
Yeah.
costs, because the district's trying to recoup find
Right,
money
right.
to pay legal fees,
Yeah.
that means I couldn't offer a class. Maybe
Right.
I have to cut a section of English or
Right.
a math support class, or maybe I have to cut an art class.
Right.
It takes money straight out of the classroom.
What's the duration of what's the how long are people in their elected position?
4 years.
So it's a 4-year.
Correct.
Okay, so, all right, so that to me seems like an interesting thing that's probably at play in this particular election cycle. Okay,
It is.
all right, and
I like your choice of the word interesting.
yeah,
That's
Yes,
interesting.
Interesting. That's what a lot of interior designers say when they see something they don't
We don't know
necessarily
what
Come
like.
to my house,
They-
you probably
they-
go, oh,
Interesting.
interesting.
That's an interesting choice.
Like Paul's aesthetic in the studio. is
That's interesting.
Yeah.
stuff all over the
Yes,
place.
it's good. It could be,
It's vibrant.
it's vibrant.
Vibrant.
Vibrant. There you go.
There's a politically
So
correct term.
this
Can I ask
vibrant
you-
will.
I got to ask one question.
Go ahead. Because no,
Maybe
actually, I
tell.
was going to ask you for your input because in your case,
My daughter went to Kappa, yeah.
but you're a perfect example of somebody who's got nobody in the school district, or do you have your grandkids in the school district?
They're in Tustin.
Okay.
But my daughter, not to Kappa High, she went in this district. She went to Tesoro.
Okay.
And where do I start? Yes, as a parent, if my child is doing something dangerous, negative, that needs addressing, I hope the school will tell me they're doing drugs, they're flunking classes, they're skipping out, they're being disruptive or whatever here. But if they see themselves
No, see, this is
a
where
different way, no, let me just finish this. Is that a negative thing that I need to be? Does that fall under that thing? Gee, my child thinks they're gay, and therefore I don't know this or I don't want to address it. And we better tell you. I'm just telling you, you better know about this because it's like gang affiliation or drugs or whatever. This is a bad thing that they're contemplating and doing.
You see, when we start going down this path, Paul, we start basically being very caught up in the specificity of a particular condition. What I'm trying to basically point out is if there's policies in place to inform the parent about things that are going on with their children in school, because I was a student one time. I know I couldn't wait to get into school because
Yeah.
then I could get away with some stuff that my parents didn't know about, right?
Right.
But if you have policies in place for that, that's great because then there is a way to address that, regardless what it is. And if there is also a state policy regarding certain things, and the school district, which is subject to the state policies, then basically takes it upon themselves to do something in conflict, it's no different than, in my mind, than basically somebody saying, and I understand it, I get it, but the solution that's sustainable doesn't take the form of being in conflict with the state policy without an alternative
Oh, clearly.
solution.
But I'm just
so
saying-
we were talking about affordable housing. We're
Right.
talking about a homeless shelter, like all of these things where we basically hot button, these issues and basically turn away from a policy that's either in place and now it's costing us money. The people that are making money are the attorneys that are involved in the lawsuit on either side. And the end users basically end up losing somehow. In what you're saying is a cutting of classes or eliminating of certain programs. Now we're looking at dual immersion. Now we're looking at art programs. Now we're
Correct.
looking at after school programs. It's got to come from somewhere.
That's right.
And when there's a policy in place and we are going to go against it without providing an alternative solution to address what is the reality on the ground, that's a little irresponsible.
And
I don't want to get into the weeds on a particular topic.
But you're imposing your particular view of sexuality on everybody else. Because what about the other kids? And
No,
the
I'm
other parents
imposing
and all
my
this stuff?
my view on policy and rules and regulations
Well,
You're
and
not.
enforcement.
I'm saying that this other person would be. They would be saying this is something that I have to report because it's serious, dangerous, negative, and you need to know about
In
this.
this case, it does deal with LGBTQ kids. So this policy is a one-size-fits-all policy, which I have a problem with one-size-fits-all
Well,
policies anyway.
that's what I mean.
Every kid's unique. Every family
Yes.
is unique. And there's
Right.
nothing, it's not like,
It's-
good point, Paul. It's not like using drugs. Using drugs is illegal.
But it's like saying homeless is a broad stroke brush that paints everybody as being a drug addict. You got an increase in homelessness in seniors that are one medical bill away from being destitute.
Absolutely.
You got an increase in homelessness for people that are maybe battered women with children.
Veterans with trauma.
Veterans with trauma. So everybody wants to accept the veteran situation, but they don't think of veterans as homeless. Until recently, that wasn't even part of the mixture. And how do I know? Because I used to be on a board of an organization called Rebuilding Together. And we basically went out there and we were a stopgap to helping veterans and actually surviving spouses of veterans because they were not being met. Their needs were not being met. So when we basically do these little very isolated definitions, okay, or when you start talking about sober living homes, yes, sober living homes we have issues with. But if you forget that sober living homes could also fall under the category of group homes, and you attack the category without really being clear and having a solution orientation, you're actually activating a little bit of negativity towards boarding cares, because those are group homes too. So like you got to be careful in not
Of
being
the unintended consequences,
absolutely,
yeah.
and this is what I'm trying to point out is that there's unintended consequences from this that don't even have to do with sexual orientation or how you feel about it or what side of the aisle you are. If you're going to do this, there's going to be a financial impact on the school district that will eventually probably not go in the favor of that policy, to be honest with you, because the state overrules in most cases. And it's going to drag, and there's going to be cost, and that cost is going to trickle down, and we're going to eliminate programs.
Absolutely.
And again, I'm going to push this point one more. As a parent in the district, if you came to me and told me my child was doing drugs, I'd want to know.
Sure.
Or being disruptive, or acting suicidal, or something else that I hadn't seen. Absolutely, please notify me. But if my child is doing something that I may not like, they're expressing atheist views. I'm a good Irish Catholic. They're expressing
That's a
socialistic
better example, by the way.
views.
Yeah.
They're expressing, anarchy. They hate something that I love.
If Ronnie Reagan Jr. is and you're on campus somehow talking about atheism, and you should join that group, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Do you now need to notify me? I know you don't care for this, and I just want to let you know your child is doing something that you may find offensive or disagreeable, and you're not smart enough to see it. This isn't a danger to them. It isn't. There isn't an immediate need to know this, but I just feel that you ought to know what your child is espousing. They're espousing neo-Nazi views or something. Maybe that's more serious or something. I don't know where you start drawing these.
I think it depends which school
prickly
you go
lines.
to.
Yeah, and if I'm offended by those kinds of views, why do I have my kid in public school? Then they should be in a private school where we all agree that these are standards of
Which,
dress
bringing it
or-
back to your religious orientation and your
Right.
faith and belief, that's why there are alternatives,
There are
including
Catholic
in our
schools and other
areas
things,
that
yeah, right.
basically, you put people in your Catholic.
School districts are secular
Yeah.
institutions, and it's not the job of the school district to impose moral values
Exactly.
on,
Well,
children.
you're actually,
Judgments.
you're subject to the rules of the
Correct.
state when it comes to education.
Correct.
So to act like you're the separate entity that is an island silo on your own, and that you basically don't have and look, we've had this conversation with different candidates not relevant to education, but the ones that are a little bit savvy and aware realize that their town isn't just a silo, that they border with other communities, and when we need regional solutions, for example, with the homeless situation, you need to work and find compromise. So to actually have this, and it's and you know what, it honestly, regardless which my own personal feelings about it, that particular topic, the fact that we are once again in South Orange County in the Capistrano Unified School District finding ourselves in this situation where money is about to get spent recklessly.
Wasted.
We've been here before. We've done this before. We all know how it went the last couple of times we went through this. So we're going to have to go through it again and learn the same results are going to happen again.
And even
And I'm
if,
saying that as a person who's just been around long enough to know what has happened before.
and even if you say to these people, but this is the right moral thing to do, we need to be notified if our children are having these views or these thoughts, that then imposes that standard on every other child parent in that district who may not agree with them.
Correct.
And I find that offensive. So these
What's that?
kids
What's-
have
what's-
to be
what- I'm-
pulled out because they're acting different. They're not conforming. They're considering joining something that some of us may find offensive, whether it's socialism or gay lifestyle or something here.
See, now you're just reflecting on yourself. You're just projecting your own past right now, Paul.
I'm saying
I
would
mean,
be-
University of Michigan was bad enough.
Oh, we were a liberal bastion where
See-
everything went.
there's-
Old hippies, yeah.
So
We
whoever's
started this
listening,
movement.
just
Yeah.
keep that in mind when you're
This
listening to Paul.
libertarian
Right?
kind of movement.
Okay, so how?
I got us one other question.
Oh, here we go.
And here is, I didn't want to go too deeply into this because I didn't know your background. The Capistrano School District has gone through some violent upheavals on
Yes,
boards.
yes.
Violent. I remember there was a massive recall, right? Was my daughter was, this was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever.
Yeah, we've been
15.
through
And,
this before.
and they went through another one because they didn't go far enough. And then there was another. There were 3 recalls in a row, so much so that a documentary was made about the dysfunction at this school board. This is not
Turmoil.
turmoil that has plagued this district for years.
That's fine, Paul. But you know what? I don't have kids. I live in the district. I'm fiscally conservative, socially liberal within, range. I look at that and I see waste.
Yeah.
Okay, and I
Tremendous.
can't get past that element of it.
I am with you. I am a taxpayer too.
Yeah.
We've lived in San Clemente, my husband and I, for about 37 years. We're homeowners. We are very responsible people. We pay our taxes, we pay our bills. I want the school district to be good fiscal stewards.
Yeah.
That's their obligation,
Yeah.
to be good fiscal stewards. And again, as someone who had to pinch pennies as a site leader, as a principal, always looking to maximize the dollar. School district too, because the school district's always been in the lower. It's basically second from the bottom as far as funding in Orange County right now. Money is hard to come by. We need to devote every dollar to the classroom and the support services. If we aren't engaged in something like, well, the turmoil, first of all, takes its toll because you can't spend
course.
your time and energy on
Of course,
teaching and
of
learning,
course.
which is
Right.
where it should be.
Of
Right.
course.
Then the money that flies out the door because they're consulting with attorneys and then the lawsuit hits. So it's literally hundreds of thousands. And if it gets to the recall point, as Paul mentioned, again, hundreds of $1,000s, you have to special elections,
Right,
more
right.
turmoil, more disruption for the school district. That's bad for kids. That's bad for our
Yeah.
schools. I find that that is what really is driving me. We just want the school board to be boring.
Right.
Let's just have it be
Yeah.
boring,
Right.
focused on their mission,
And
which
to
is
teach
educating
kids.
kids.
Right.
That's right.
Right. Yeah, I hear you, and I mean, again, you know, we can, especially with the current climate of everything that's on the national level that trickles down, whether you like it or not, into nonpartisan positions
The
and what have you.
culture war
But
that,
we
you
all,
know.
but we all know, right? We all know. Nobody's a dummy here that's basically like got a blind eye on the fact that it trickles down. I'm trying to just keep it very clean and very clear from a fiscal responsibility of the allocation of resources and the potential loss of what those resources that's supposed to do X are now going to be used for something they were never intended for. There's going to be there's going to be consequences to that are basically avoidable.
I know when I'm paying my taxes for schools, I don't want them to go to lawsuits.
And unnecessary.
Unnecessary.
Yeah, and we've been through this, not in the long past, in the recent past, specific to the district. Okay, so well, now that we've all vented,
And should we insist then that if a child is pulled over for speeding, and the guy says, or the girl or guy, whatever, the cop says, "Hey, what's your name?" and they say a different name than's on their driver's license, or I'm Susie instead of Sam, or something here. Do the police have an obligation then to call the parents, say your child's using a different pronoun? If they go in for anything, and how many levels of this of government contact do they have to report that your child is using a different pronoun?
And why, parents have
And why?
agency. Parents can talk with their
Yeah.
children. There's, and maybe since it's a hot topic, that's a choice that parents should make.
the
Yeah.
the thing that's always fascinated me is I understand that in many cases parents are very busy. Both parents are working. That they're and I look. I've been a kid. I know when you want to basically not really engage your parents in something, you can find a way to not
for
do
sure.
it. Right. But at the end of the day, why are we asking our schools to be parents to our kids? Like why? Where's that? Why is there an abdication of responsibility that way? Like the schools are schools.
It's kind of like Big Brother, really.
It-
Like
it-
when you don't
that's
want
my
them-
point.
It is a
My
little
point.
bit. It is a little bit. And
But see, their counter argument is
I'm
that
not
this-
looking for the school to be that moral ground filter. I'm looking for the school to be a place where the kid is educated enough to basically be able to go on a path of being successful in whatever they may want to pursue and actually be able to go to a higher level of education if they choose to, or at least be able to be prepared so that they can actually sustain themselves, be a
100%.
I mean,
But you just
that's
hit the nail on the head. If the other side was in here, they'd say you are indoctrinating these children to believe that anything's okay.
Well, it's
You're-
okay to be LGBTQ. Absolutely, I agree
and
with that.
and many of these people are saying it's not.
Look, but I think, we're
need to know if
we're
that's
causing issues. We're putting fires up that basically are avoidable.
Right.
And when you basically step away too far from the dollar and cents impact of those little adventures that were going on, they have an impact.
And it can hurt student achievement Communities
Of
benefit
course, the
from
stress level and all that emotional stuff and mental impact. I mean, I'm not even touching that.
well, and communities
But it's
benefit
true.
from good schools.
Absolutely.
Good schools, people want to buy houses where the community has good schools. So
Clearly.
that goes back to property values. You want a strong school district who has outstanding schools, and that keeps your property values high.
So I want to ask you. I want to just step away from that for a minute because I think we've beaten it
Yeah.
to death here. But let me, and I don't want to keep encouraging him to weigh in. Right? Because we'll never get out of the studio today. But I want to ask you to reflect because you started in the district. You were recruited into the district. So give me a little bit of background, not on that, but in terms of demographics, in terms of composition, in terms of the scale of the responsibility. This district has grown immensely.
And what does it cover?
And where are we, and how many people do we have, and what's the future look like? Because we're also an aging community. So I mean, I'm referring to the bus depot, for example, right? That now is basically going to be something else, right? So are we looking at also some of this stuff where the nature of the task that the district is sort of therefore is also changing?
So to address that, I'll kind of tackle the demographics.
Yeah.
And what's the district cover? What's
The district covers from San Clemente, Dana Point, San Juan Capistrano, Laguna Niguel, Aliso Viejo, Mission Viejo, Ladera Ranch, up into Santa Margarita. It's quite large.
And how many students are in the district?
Currently about 42,000. Now, there has been declining enrollment because, as you mentioned, our communities are aging out.
Right.
So over the past 15 years, probably it's declined about 10,000 students, around 52,000 15 years ago. So in my community, for example, I live in San Clemente. My neighborhood is mostly people who are my age or older, and I'm not exactly young. In the past maybe 5 years, we have half a dozen families that have kids who have moved in, but they're not little kids. They're middle school or high school kids. And that's a reflection of what's happening all across our county and our state.
Right.
Our communities are aging out. People aren't moving away. People like me and my husband, we have a house it's would fit, a family of 5 or 6. There's 2 of us. So it would be nice if someone else could have that house. So anyway, that's a very common
and so you're donating it this week. This is the thing here.
I have my eye on some young families.
Paul is packing his bag. No, but I mean, and I'll just take a second here. The reason a lot of that's happening because my neighborhood's the same way. The reason a lot of that is happening is also because why would you want to move out of a familiar environment?
Right.
Why would you want to impact your quality of life? Your house has equity in it. You're looking at it as potentially a safeguard or against unexpected expenses. So there is no, and you bought it at a certain point, and now basically you have the value built into it. So that has an impact on our inventory for real estate. That has an impact on pricing, right? But just to focus on that for a minute, we don't have alternative options. You have assisted living. Or but you don't have like the sort of independent living format that's maybe smaller within the same areas.
Or if you do, it's quite expensive.
Yes, and
More expensive than staying in your house.
Absolutely, and a lot of people that don't have a house to stay in as they age. I'll tell you from experience with my parents, it's very costly to do the in-house, but it's even more costly to do the out-of-house.
Exactly.
Right? And so, and a lot of people who did actually sell in the top of market or whatever, only to find themselves that they can't afford to buy even something smaller, and they've had to move out of state. So,
and that's affected Capo and also again all up and down the state for that
right.
very thing that you're
I
describing.
would almost make the argument that it is a global phenomenon, to be honest with you, with some places, or a national phenomenon with some places just running behind others. So with that change in demographics, with that sort of aging population, what does that mean to the school district?
Well, it means that we will see for a while the school district continue to decline in enrollment. So that means fewer students, which means less dollars, because the way the state of California funds schools is by attaching an amount to each student. So the district will have to be, again, very frugal, not something new for the school district, and they'll have to look at whether or not they will close some schools.
And so have we had a decrease in enrollment?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she said
Like
About
what?
10,000.
from 50,000 to 40,000.
Yes, right about there.
Okay.
And we have had in the past year or two kids coming back. Kids went to private schools and charter schools or home schools, but we've seen a nice return of those students to Capistrano Unified.
Okay.
What we've also seen is the thing that you described before is people moving out of state. So maybe
What
700-ish.
what do you account for the reason for people moving back?
Housing costs.
No, not out of state, for students coming back to the.
Well, it's an outstanding school district.
Yes, it is.
I would
Really
put-
outstanding school district.
So
really.
outstanding.
Yeah.
I mean, families can choose for the most part the school they want to go to. There would be an exception like Las Palmas, which is a dual immersion school, and
Yeah.
it's fully enrolled, and you have to begin in kindergarten because
Right.
of the way the dual immersion program works. But basically, they can choose which school they want to go to. So that gives parents
have
a
a
lot
lot
of
of choice.
latitude.
Yeah.
Yeah. And why would you spend 20, 30, $40,000 for a private school per year when you can go to this outstanding stellar school district?
So are we saying that the big part of the reason for why people who may step away and go to private school and then come back is the cost impact? Or have you guys looked into it? I'm just curious.
I wouldn't say drilled down to that level because that would take staff time to actually
Yeah,
do
yeah.
that. But the numbers are there. And also sometimes parents put their kids in private school, this is speaking from my own experience, and find, that really wasn't the best fit. Or they get recruited into an athletic program and it just doesn't work out. So then they come back. Or they want to be with their friends, which is very common.
Got it. Okay.
Did homeschooling go up during COVID?
During
or-
COVID, yes. Yes.
So we've had a decline. What's the projections? I mean, you say for a while. Are we looking at a potential reversal of that trend, or is that pretty much like an ongoing trend? What do we?
We won't see the kind of growth we had during the 90s in Capo because that was when the school district, when all the development was happening in
Right.
South
A
County.
lot of people moving into that
so
area.
so South County is pretty much built out except for the Rancho Mission Viejo area. So we won't see that kind of growth, but we will as the birth rates turn around, and they are starting to turn around. We'll see. I don't know. Maybe we'll stay even. It's hard to project, because you do have to do a demographic
I'm
study.
just look. My first degree was in economics, so
Yeah.
I can't not see connecting the dots, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm looking at a district, or call it a territory, an area that
Mm-hmm.
has a higher cost of living, a lot of expensive houses, it's by the coast. I don't see it dropping or reversing that, and I'm looking at families that are basically maybe moving in and have children, which is an expensive outcome outlay, right? That the chances of an area that is that expensive to then be to have a reversal of appealing to people that are earlier in their life path with children and more expenses, for that area to be
It's not going to happen.
achievable
Not gonna happen.
or
Well-
viable for them, it unless we provide alternative types of housing that's going to allow for
Right.
people to come in there.
Or what you find is, which has happened in San Clemente since I've lived there 37 years, is the people who move into town tend to be higher income people. So that's happening too.
But you also mentioned a minute ago, Sherine, and that it's not young kids. It's people that
Probably
are maybe
not.
a little bit further along in their careers. Their kids are a little bit older, so they're coming in, but they're coming in not at the
Yeah.
beginning of
I'll tell you the more
so-
serious issue. In the Capo had what was the bond that they tried to pass, or maybe they did pass a couple of years
No,
ago?
they did not pass
They
it.
did.
I didn't
The
think it was
bond
like $1
didn't pass.
billion or something
Yeah.
like that. It was a huge sum. I thought it was $1 billion or something, and they were going to rehab and redo all this stuff. And too many people say, "My kids don't go to schools anymore." We're not going to pitch in and do that. I think you're going to see a declining support for school bonds and other school expenditures because my kids are through.
I guess what I'm trying to paint is a picture where a lot of this stuff is interconnected.
Yes.
And you can't look at it in a vacuum. You can't look at it under a microscope so
Exactly.
specifically that you lose focus of everything
You
else.
need the context.
Right, you need the context. Otherwise, it's meaningless. Okay, so with that being said, what is the school? So the school district might find itself in position to do stuff where it's re-envisioning, or maybe shedding some of the properties that are not needed, or mothballing stuff for a while. Because after a while, I'm just talking about it from my professional experience, you mothball a middle school because you don't need it. Well, you can't mothball it beyond a certain time before now the cost of refurbing it to basically bring it back in line is more expensive than building something new. You may not even be able to use that same formulation of that facility because the needs academically or education-wise are so different that you can't really retrofit, right? So I guess part of the question is, as a person sitting on the board of trustees of the Capistrano Unified School District, you may be now facing things that were not necessarily part of your earlier journey,
That's
right?
right.
Where
Entirely the opposite,
you're
actually.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit while we still have time.
Well, we've seen it again in the county, and we've seen it's hard. It's hard for communities to accept school closures. They want their local schools, even if the local school becomes very low enrolled, small enrollment. And ideally, we would be able to offer. I mean, where I went to school, which was a tiny little town, well, we had a small school because the town was so small.
Yeah.
There wasn't an option to close the school.
Yeah.
But again, because Capo is in the bottom two of funding in Orange County, then we will have to look closely at that. And yes, what do we do with those schools? And there's all kinds of laws that actually affect that. So we have to be very, I would say, what's the word I'm looking for? Thoughtful about identifying schools and then what we would do with those after they're closed. So for example, you mentioned the bus yard, which was actually an elementary school way back in the day. So now it's
For those who are not familiar with where that is, but are familiar with that part of the county, it was right off the Beach City's exit as you go towards Costco.
In Dana Point.
In Dana Point. Yeah.
so it's going to be housing now.
Okay.
It's going to be developed, and the district made an agreement. The upside of the agreement, well, first of all, there's more housing, which is, we're desperate for. And the district does get several $1 million for that, and they're going to use much of that money to help refurbish Dana Hills High School, some of the needs they have there.
Okay. So so now all of a sudden you guys are in real estate development business, and that's where I'm trying to get to. So now the assets of the school district are substantial because you got properties in primo locations that are now potentially going to go on the market for some sort of a deal that will benefit the school district. So there's more money at play. I'm sorry, I'm a little jaded. I look for where the strings connect, right?
Right.
And I'm looking at that and I'm going, okay, interesting. So who's benefiting from that? What's going to happen with that, right? And so if you wouldn't mind, I mean, you said there's some rules and regulations and stuff that you have to be sensitive about, right? Like what? Like,
Would a charter school want to come and take over the school?
okay.
So that doesn't help the school district because basically that's a pass through of money.
Yeah.
But there are some rights that charter schools have if
Right.
they have a high enough enrollment.
Right.
So that
Obviously, you couldn't do that with the bus yard, but let's say it's a school that's been mothballed.
Right.
Okay.
one of the schools that maybe is currently open and operating.
Yeah.
There may be other entities, government entities
Yeah.
that could claim a property or an interest in a property. The district also has rights, so it would be a negotiation.
Okay.
And it would be really incumbent upon the school district to engage in a negotiation that's going to result in the best outcome financially for the school district.
How was it when the negotiation was taking place for the bus yard?
Well, I'm not on the school
No,
board, so
I
I wasn't
know,
involved
yeah.
in that, and of course that would be the business division.
Yeah.
I think because
Was it relatively amicable? Was
Yes.
it relatively smooth?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I think they were, they came to the table to
Yeah.
want to find yes.
Yeah.
And I think there were some city Dana Point had some concerns, and I think the school district and the developer responded to those.
Yeah.
And modified the project, but ultimately it would be what they call a win-win for
Mm-hmm.
the school district and for the developer and for the city too, because they were able to offer more housing.
And how is the current lay of the land when it comes to like charter schools, public schools? How is it now? It used to be a little contentious. It used to be a little bit competing for resources before.
I would say the same.
Is it still the same?
I think Capo has 9 or 10 charter schools. My personal opinion is we should have a cap on charter schools in any district, a number, maybe 9, maybe 10, maybe 3. I don't know. But the charter school, the idea of it that was first promoted back in the 90s, it's completely different from that now. The state of California had a cap of 100 charter schools in the state.
Okay.
So it's gone far afield. It's become very politicized. I would say we need to take a close look at that and put some more.
And charter schools further drain money from the district because the state then gives them the money for the student and not the district.
Yeah, but again, it's
Well, there's a school district that's mostly an online school, has, I don't know, maybe 10,000 students. Those students aren't all from Capistrano Unified. They're from other areas, San Bernardino County, Orange County, San Diego County. But Capistrano Unified is the one who funds it. So that is money that, we're paying for.
And did
the
I hear
state.
you say that we're the second, because I'm
Lowest.
lowest funded? And yet you've got to be
In
one
the
of the
state.
you got to be one of
Excuse me,
the
the county.
You got to be one of the biggest ones in the county. Though I'm biggest in terms of enrollment and size.
Yes, yes.
So one of the biggest in terms of enrollment and size, but one of
The second
smallest.
smallest funded.
Correct.
Wow.
And then, when I worked in Laguna Beach, for example, it's small school district, and it's funded differently. It's what's called the basic aid school district, but Laguna Beach gets literally twice as much money per student as Capistrano Unified. I think Capistrano Unified school districts are every bit as valuable as the students in Laguna Beach Unified, and we should all be funded at that level.
Before you go, because Paul's going to kill me here if I
Yeah, we gotta
further,
go.
right. You've been out running the campaign. You've been meeting people. You've been knocking on doors. What are some of the things that people are telling you?
What's the reaction?
What's the reaction?
For me, it's been really positive.
Any particular repeat issues or things that people have been mentioning to you?
Well, they're concerned about they don't want the turmoil. Most people
Please,
have lived
yes.
here for a long time. They just don't want to see that again.
Yeah.
They want kids to be able to go to school in good schools that have arts and athletics and academics and safe facilities. They just want it to be, a calm school district.
Yeah.
And I interviewed with the teachers back in March to see if I could earn their endorsement. All of the candidates had the opportunity to do that, and I did earn their endorsement. So I've been walking with them and knocking on doors. So, our community loves our teachers, and so it's been a very positive reception.
Well, I think we will leave it on that positive note before somebody, who basically weighs in from the shadows.
Amen. I would hate to see it go back to the chaos and the
Well, I
three
think-
recalls or whatever they went through. That was nuts.
Well,
Waste of time, waste of effort.
I
I
waste
was
of
there.
money.
It was bad.
Yeah, I was too, and I sat on a couple of those meetings, and it was insane. I mean, just the level of anger and animosity and divisiveness. And to be honest, I think that's a common reaction, regardless of whether it's the school district we're talking about, or city council elections, or supervisor, or even national.
Just do what you need to do. Let's
Yeah.
not engage in all this turmoil.
Yeah, I'm kind of done worrying about waking up in the morning and wondering what kind of chaos I'm facing, regardless where it's coming from. To be honest with you, right? I mean, we wouldn't put up with that in our personal relationships, let alone from elected officials. So, well, I think we've covered a lot of it,
But
and I'm going to hear from some people I know.
it is more important to worry about
But it's okay.
pronouns than cost, though. I think money is a secondary issue when it comes to pronouns.
No.
So remember, we're talking about a tiny number of
Yes.
students.
Oh, my
That
goodness.
just
We're spending so much time and energy on something that pertains
like
to
we
a
just
tiny
did, like
number.
we just
Just
did.
did.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm keeping it to it's what do they call it? Kitchen table topics. Okay.
Money.
Money.
Checkbook topics. Yes, it's money, man.
Taxpayer funds.
Why would you want to do
Elsewhere.
that? For what reason?
I-
Ego?
Right. And I was responsible for budgets as a principal and a superintendent. Millions of dollars. We have to be very judicious. We have to be good fiscal stewards, and that's something that would be at risk if we devolve into
particularly in
turmoil.
this environment, declining enrollment.
I will
declining,
end that's a great segue, and I'm going to end with this. You, in your role in the past, had to face those realities and responsibilities. If we go down this path where we're spending money on stuff that are just these little adventures, right? The people that are sitting in your former position of principals are still going to be, the demand on them is going to still be delivering on what it is that they're delivering,
That's right.
but now with less resources.
Exactly. That sums it up in a nutshell.
Yeah, and that's
That's it. That's the
ridiculous.
election.
As things are getting more
Bad for
expensive,
kids.
and resources are getting less because you don't have the number of kids in the district, and the state isn't basically compensating you. Now the number is like 10,000. I mean, 10,000.
10,000 down.
That's an impact.
20%.
That's a quick decline.
Yeah, over 15 years. But
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. It does.
And it's only going to go down further.
Well, a death by 1,000 cuts is still a death. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate you being here, Sherine. It was a really good
Thank you.
conversation. I really
Thank you.
enjoyed
I
it.
appreciated being here and hearing from Paul and from you. Thank you.
So, whatever you're going to do, though, get out. I mean, it's open. And we're starting with the voting.
Don't just
So,
skip that
you know,
line
you
on the
probably-
ballot.
I got my package in the mail.
Vote for Sherine Smith,
And how
How
do
do-
people find out about
San
you?
Clemente Area 3. I have a Facebook page.
And a website.
And a website, Sherine.
How do you spell
Sherine?
Okay.
4, number 4, CUSD.com. You can just put the same thing into Facebook. It'll pop up. Also Instagram.
And what's the area that you're basically running for?
San
district?
Clemente Area 3, which is most of San Clemente.
Okay.
And you would think that a teacher would know how to spell her first name. Shireen should have 2 R's in it, not one.
Blame my mom.
Okay, you just got an F on your paper there, Paul. Never criticize the teacher. What are you talking about? Don't you know that by now? All right. Well, thank you again for being here. I really
My
appreciate
pleasure.
it. And Paul, thanks for letting me whisper in your ear one more day this week.
We'll see you again
I'll
next
see
week.
you on Monday.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Register. Make sure your registration is correct. Vote. If you don't vote, you don't get to wine. Thanks.